We are live on YouTube, Twitch, Kick, not on Rumble today. Rumble's acting up, but it's okay. And then we're also live on X. We'll be live on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and every podcast outlet out there in just a couple of hours. So thank you for being here. We're going to talk about the Pope. We're going to talk about the Canada. We're going to talk about the United States. We're going to talk about the tariffs. We're also going to talk about what else? I have notes here. And then the Rufus Effect. So if that gets your attention. And by the way, thank you for those of you in the live. I see a few that had jumped in on the other channels. I appreciate you guys. Do me a favor, if you like this content, like, share, repost. Give us a 5-star if you're on the podcast outlets. And we will be back in 46 seconds with Rufus the Enforcer. I forgot the title. Okay, we'll be back in 46 seconds. Thank you for my YouTube listeners, watchers, and also YouTube has a podcast. People didn't know that, but good to see you, Dr. John. Yeah, YouTube has a podcast section. I didn't know that until like last year. And so when I do my podcast, there's a separate channel just for podcast listeners, people that don't need the video. But it's cool to have that. I was just thinking, I was checking my cell phone to make sure that the feed is good enough. And the funny thing is, we've been meeting more and more people organically here in Oregon, right? So it doesn't change the way I speak or the way that I talk. However, I do give disclaimers. I told people that they're like, "Wow, you have a podcast?" And yeah, I mean, I do. It's not. I mean, it's cool, but the fact that I see them every week, great friends, and they're church people, right? So. I always say, just so you know, the majority of the people that listen, watch, or view my content, they're not, Protestant Christians, or they're not Christians. So I give them that disclaimer. That doesn't mean that I'm not. I tell them sometimes you may see content, or we may have a guest that it may not be in direct alignment with what you believe in. But anyways, I was watching this and I was thinking, oh, okay, that looks cool. And I'm thinking, I wonder if anybody locally is watching right now live, because it's in the middle of the day, so most likely they're all at work. There's a lot of ranchers in this area, so chances are they might be chasing some animals or bulls. So that's why today I've been so occupied with this YouTube channel. I won't promote them because I didn't get permission to use their likeness or imagery, and he's actually very vocal about that. So I'm not using him to promote because I don't necessarily need. I just thought it was cool. But there's this bull named Rufus. You guys can do your due diligence. And this bull is so crazy. It's huge. Like, this bull is like, it's like this massive, like, traps and biceps, and he's got these horns that are starting to come out. And the rancher, I don't know his name, but he's kind of a cool guy. I don't use the language filters that he does, obviously, but the channel is cool because I learn a lot about animals and bulls, and it kind of hits home because we're living in the middle of it right now, right? So, but the name of the bull is Rufus. So whenever he's out, whenever the rancher is out in the field or the pastures and he's having problems with the other bulls, he calls Rufus, and Rufus can be like way up on a hillside, and you can hear this like this is, I can't do it. I'm gonna sound stupid. I'm gonna try it. It's like you hear this on a mountain. You hear this like this roaring, and he says, "Come on, Rufus!" And so this video that I first saw was there was another bull that was basically wanted to. I don't know what the context, but I just, from what I saw, the bull wanted to like regulate him. You know what I mean? And so when Rufus finally comes down, the other bulls fall into line, right? And I thought, wow, this is so crazy that you can call a bull to come and help you regulate the other bulls. And for those of you that watched Pastor Rory, our podcast we did, I did a podcast with Pastor Rory. He's one of the pastors for Calvary Chapel. For anybody that's on the West Coast, you may have heard Calvary Chapel. They started way back in the day in the very popular hippie days in California. And anyways, Pastor Roy is one of those pastors of this church, and they have churches in Hawaii, California, Oregon, obviously. I'm not sure where else they have churches, but anyways, the DNA is the same. Okay. So anyways, Pastor Rory was talking about bulls in our podcast. He talked about that. They had to leave some bulls up on a hillside. And I remember asking, well, were they listening? He goes, the horses or the bulls? I said, oh, the bulls. I didn't quite register the conversation immediately, right? So basically the bulls were not listening, and they left them up on the hill. And I said, well, you guys don't have a Rufus? Because, I'm thinking it'd be cool if you had a Rufus. So that's kind of what we're leading in with Rufus, the Enforcer, or the Rufus Effect. And to the guy who, I don't know who he is, so if anybody knows the guy on YouTube, just let him know we're not stealing his content today. So, but there's a lot of people that they'll steal the content, they'll repurpose it, and so before we get into the subject matter, I have 5 bullet points I want to just kind of share my heart on today. But before we get into that, I always try to be grateful and tell you guys thank you for being here. Thank you for investing your time. You could be doing anything. Maybe you have a break. So thank you for being a part of our podcast. We are live on several platforms. So we just thank you for being here. Whatever platform you're on, we appreciate you. There's this past week on Twitter, for those of you that are on X or Twitter, whatever you call it, there's been a lot of things that are in my timeline where people are not too happy about. They're not too happy about the monetization models, and so people that are monetized on Twitter, on X, I see a lot of that on X. And I feel like I see it more on X than any other platform, where people are complaining about stuff like that. And so I encourage people to say, hey, look, if they're not going to pay you what you think you're worth, go and find a way to go, create your own monetization model, if you will. Right? It can be merchandising, can be workshops, offer things for free, and once they consume the free content and say, and by the way, if you like this, I have a bigger pie for you to consume, So anyways, other than that, with Twitter, there's been a lot of things. And what I'm going to look on Twitter today and share some headlines with you guys. And I will say this past week, outside of X, Twitter, just looking at headlines, the other day, and you can't make this stuff up. This is crazy. I was watching this movie with my kids called The Conclave. Not promoting it, just telling you guys, hey, I saw it. And first, I remember telling them, I don't want to watch this, because I'm at home and spending time with the kids. And I remember telling her, I don't think I want to watch this. Can we watch something else? And I'm so glad that we sat through and watched it. What I found out was, the movie was actually made last year, and regarding the Pope. So it's about the Pope selection. And I'm not a Catholic. I never have been a Catholic. I think when I was a kid, I think we went to a Catholic church once or twice, and I've been to a few Catholic weddings. And I'll just say this: I fell asleep quite a bit, so I felt like they were very long and monotone. And I remember going to a Catholic wedding one time, and I'm like, I I remember sitting. I have my nice clothes on, and everybody stands up, and I'm looking around. I'm like, so I stand up, and then they do some sign, and then they all sit back down. And I'm like, and so I guess I sit back down, and then like maybe literally 15, 20 minutes later, everybody stands up again. So I'm like, okay, I stand up as well, and I'm looking around, and then I sit down again, and I think at least 5 or 6 times minimum, just standing up, sitting down, standing, and nothing other than just people saying something that I didn't know, right? And then the wedding kind of slowed down a little bit, and then I remember getting elbowed in my side. One of my friends is like, "Wake up!" So it was I felt like it was like a 2 hour wedding, because I remember they lit candles, and they were throwing water or something on each other. And I'm not making fun of it. Just what I remember, because I was kind of younger. So I'm pushing 50, so my memory's not as good on certain events, and the Catholic wedding is one of them. But I remember how hot it was. Of course, Hawaii, they don't believe in AC because we have the nice trade winds, but it still gets hot. So anyway, I don't know why I went on a whole side tangent of weddings. I think Catholic. Oh yeah, so the movie The Conclave, it's about the selection of a pope. So the story, if you haven't, I don't want to give I'll give you a spoiler alert for those of you that haven't seen it, and if you want to just like, I don't know, come back in a few minutes. But the movie, it's about how the Pope, he dies, right? And now this is last year now, and I agree, Dr. John. Ceremony is very important. My dad was a Roman Catholic, so as a kid, I remember my dad being very adamant on saying, I was a Roman Catholic, not just a Catholic. I was a Roman Catholic. I don't know what the designation means today, if it means anything to anybody. But yeah, so this movie, it talks about I feel like this movie was kind of anti-Catholic for some, maybe. For me, it wasn't anti-Catholic. I enjoyed it. I thought it was funny. I know it wasn't a comedy, but it was a comedy to me. So to me and my wife, they had a type in shadow, what I believe. They had a couple of deceivers in there. They had a couple of there were cardinals. I think that's what you call them, priests. They were smoking cigarettes in this movie. Like they had a smoking section in the Vatican. And I'm like, I didn't know they had a smoking section. So that's new to me. I didn't know that. And they also had like security, like massive security devices to scan them as it came in. They didn't really highlight on, the law enforcement or the police or whatever they're called. I want to say they're the Vatican Guard. But anyways, so all these guys are coming in from different countries. And I'm giving a spoiler alert. So if you haven't seen the movie, I think we watched it on Amazon. The movie highlights the human side of the Catholic Church. And there's four guys that are running. Okay, they're kind of running head to head for this position of the Pope. And I guess you got to vote. And a bunch of these men are just voting. They're sitting in a room for hours, if not days, voting for who the next Pope is going to be. The one thing about the movie that I feel like they probably could have done better is maybe highlight on the spiritual aspect, which they didn't really. Which I guess is not it's not a Christian movie, so it's not my choice. But it wasn't my. I'm not the director, so. But I I can see why if I was a Catholic, I probably wouldn't like the movie. Uh, but the selection process, from an outsider perspective, it looks very, very political, extremely political, and you can see that the motives or the hearts of man come through in this movie, and I can see where you have different countries. So one of the countries that was in contention was Cardinal from one of the continent of Africa. I don't know which country he was from. I think they called it Abiyami. That was his name in the movie. But he was almost going to make it to the top 5. And something happened where there was a controversy with his past. I don't want to spoil it too much. But what we found out was one of the characters, Tremblay, who was most likely going to win it all, he was behind this orchestration of these events that had brought the past of the Abayami, the guy from Africa. So it is very political, Dr. John. I agree. What's crazy about this movie, though, is that it came out last year, and then we just saw live today the process, or yesterday. I'm sorry, yesterday, or the past couple of days, right? The process of choosing a pope. I guess the question I would ask is, are these guys praying for God to reveal to them who they want to vote for, or are they just kind of like the governmental process? Like, because I know the movie is probably not. I'm sure the movie's not accurate 100%. But in the movie, nowhere did I see them praying together as a body. Right? I didn't see these cardinals. Hey, let's pray about it. Like, I didn't see that at all. Not once did I ever see. Hey, let's pray about it. We've seen a lot of bickering in the movie and a lot of just kind of going back and forth. I've seen a lot of like side conversations, and well, one of the things in our church, our modern church, well, I'll just say our church, whenever we have important discussions or things that are sensitive or are very important that can affect the body, there's 2 parts for us, especially for me and my wife. We always have number 1, accountability. There's always a witness. I'll give you an example. I forget. I think it was Wednesday, Thursday. Let's just say Sunday. My wife gave a prophetic word. She gave a declaration that God put on her heart, and it was in front of the body. Okay. So what I did was I grabbed up my cell phone and I started recording her audio. And the reason is, even though it was in front of people and people heard and witnessed, and I recorded it just so that there is an objective recollection of what she said. That way, if somebody said, hey, your wife said that I would be, inheriting $1 million next week because that's what she prophesied, I said, well, let's pull it up. Let's see. So that's an example of accountability. So that's the first thing. If you have something important, that's not the number 1 thing, but that's one of the things. The other thing is, I definitely want to make sure we pray about it. You should at least pray, hey, God, is this who you want us to vote for? I didn't see a lot of that. I didn't see any of that in the movie, other than a guy praying with another guy. But as far as the decision making, I didn't see that. And maybe they did in Latin, because a lot of the movie has Latin. They speak Latin a lot, so maybe they did. Maybe, I don't know. But if they did in Latin, I would like to see if they did a translation. But there are a lot of parts in the movie where they didn't translate what they were saying in Latin. So I don't know if that was on purpose. I don't know. I should go look it up. But so yeah, accountability, obviously pray. I didn't see that in the movie. And so it highlighted something that was really interesting to me in the era of the Catholic Church as far as when they choose a pope. I'm debating if I should tell you the ending of the movie. So there's a guy in the movie. Let me see if I have his name written down. His name is which one is the guy? Lawrence. So Lawrence is the manager. And there's another guy named Bellini. And Bellini is one of the guys that I thought was going to win it. Dr. John on YouTube said, as you know, most religions are void of relational connection. That's very true. It's nobody's immune to that, right? So obviously, I'm not going to get into doctrinal differences, from denomination to denomination or from religion to religion. But I do believe there's a lot of, and Pastor Rory really, he kind of, how should I put it? He pulled the reins on our discussion when I did a podcast with him, and I told him thank you. I said, I want to thank you, by the way, Pastor Rory, because when I brought up the question of Mary, and I've got strong opinions, obviously, and you guys know my heart where I feel about placing any human being in a deity position. I'm totally against that. So, but when I brought up Mary and the statue or the monument, there's actually a monument to her in Boston, Massachusetts, and this monument is, I would say, at least 50 feet high, at least. And she's got a golden crown above her head. It's a crown. Like, there's no mistake. It's a crown above her head. Huge crown. The crown is like massive. And so Mary's like, and she's standing on the world, right? And then the picture that I took, and then Jesus is actually in the photo, but he's on a tiny little cross, and he's still on the cross, and his face is in anguish. He's like, obviously, I find that interesting that we place someone, I don't care who it is, it can be anybody, it can be Michael Jordan, I don't care. We put them up on a 50-foot statue, and then there's, we still keep Jesus on a cross. So that's my interpretation of that, right? So Jesus has left the building for sure, and he's outside of the building. he's literally outside of the building. So going back to the Catholic Church, here's what I believe. And talking about Pastor Roy, I do believe there are some amazing spirit-filled Catholics that actually read their Bible from cover to cover and have gotten a heavy revelation from the Lord on what it means to have a relationship with Jesus Christ and nobody else, right? Like, meaning, like, I don't pray to my grandpa. I don't pray to, my mom. I never, I know where she is. I don't like, hey, Mom, I just want to say I miss you. I don't do that. And obviously there's some scriptural, there's some scriptural back into that, right? In a reference to the dead. I won't bring it up because we're not preaching today. If you guys want to do your due diligence, you can do that. But so I do believe there's a lot of Catholics that when they make decisions, like if you're a cardinal or I don't know what they call them, a priest, whatever, I do believe there's some, the Catholic Church has millions. I forget how many millions. I do know as far as Christians, there's 2.4 billion Christians around the world, and then there's like 2.1 billion Muslims. Catholics make up, millions upon, I don't know how many millions, but here's what I'll say, and we're talking about the movie and the Pope. I didn't even talk about the Pope yet, the new one. I'm going to give you guys observations. This is what I do. I talk about stuff and I give you guys observation. I do hope that people that are heavily, deeply rooted in the Catholic Church will come to a place in realization that there is actually a relationship involved. It's not a bunch of rules and regulations that do right or do wrong, or I gotta. There at some point there's a legitimate like, hey, like, you know what I mean? Like, you start your day, say, God, thank you for today. Like, what would you have me do today? You know, like an honest conversation with a God that loves you. And so that's my lead in with the Pope. And so my kids are asking, as we watch this movie, the Conclave, they're like, so what is all this smoke and stuff? So I said, well, they burn, I guess they burn the papers, whatever they're voting for, they burn these things. And then the smoke goes outside the building, and whoever's there, they can either be like, or they can be like, yeah. And so in the movie, of course, you know, the first 2 hours are just like a bunch of disappointments. And so I think somebody can fact check me. I think black is no, or we haven't decided, and then white is we found one. Or so in the movie, I'm gonna spoil it just so you guys can. I don't want to spoil the ending because I really want you guys to watch it. But here's what I'll say: of the 5 guys that were running for the position of Pope, I think I wrote this down. I don't want to butcher this part. So we've got a guy who is he's a Tremblay. He is a orchestrator. He's a conniver. He's a deceiver. Okay. And then we have Lawrence, who is the manager of these guys that are coming from different countries. Okay. And he seems to be the one guy that is the most qualified, but he doesn't want to do it because he doesn't think he's worthy. There's another guy, Bellini, who doesn't want to do it either, but everybody's trying to get him to do it. You know, it's like he doesn't want to do it. He's probably the youngest, and they want him to do it. And he's like, I don't want to do this. Like, I don't want that position. Like that. I relate to Bellini because I'm not saying I was qualified or not qualified. I can speak on behalf of him not wanting a job. Okay. And it has nothing to do with a desire to love or serve people. Okay. But in the era of pastoring, that's not something that I sought the Lord on, or I didn't say, hey, God, would you give me a church or something? No, it was the farthest thing from my mind. My dad, my parents, my uncles, my cousins, my grandparents, all pastors. I have probably 16 pastors and church leaders in my family. And I'm like, I don't want that. I don't want that. I don't want that office of duty. I don't want that. I don't want to deal with that position. Let me pause this for 1 second, family. I'm going to just hold that thought. Sorry about that. I don't normally do that, but I was in the middle of a heavy thought. I don't want this to be butchered. So I do apologize. I don't normally do that, family. My wife came in, so I'm trying to stay on, my audio, I can't stand to hear extra audio coming in. So anyways, thank you for being patient. So yeah, going back to the whole idea of wanting to um, lead a body of people, and it wasn't about me wanting to um, serve people or not. It's just because I grew up knowing and seeing um, the church on the back end of it, right? So I seen the business part of it. And it is business, family. I don't care what church you go to. I don't care what denomination. I don't care what religion. There is always a business side of the church. I'll just say the church. Okay. You can't get away from it. And here's the reason why you can't just have a church that just like, hey, just put everything in this building and God will provide and do. No, like there's hands, there's feet, there's people, there's leaders, there's business owners, there's just all these moving parts, right? So every church has a what I always say, a back end. So, growing up, I seen the back end of it, and I didn't want, I didn't want that. It's not that I was negative about it. I just didn't want any part of that. And so when the opportunity came for us to lead, to even carry a title of pastor, it's like it's not something I pursued, right? Here's a crazy thing. I would always say, God, I don't want that. Like, I don't want, and I had some bad things to say in the area of like how I interpreted. Like, I don't want to babysit people, and that was wrong. I checked myself on that. But I didn't pursue it. But here's the funny thing. God pursued us. And everything just happened to line up to where we had no choice. I won't say we had no choice, but it was almost like that, where God is like, here it is. So go ahead and take it. And so I relate to the guy Bellini in the movie The Conclave. And he didn't get the job. You know what I mean? So inside your sane head said free will. Yeah, you could say free will for sure. But so in this movie, I'm trying to finish this thought on the movie. It's taking me longer than I thought, which is funny. The other guy in this movie, the name is Benitez. So for those of you that seen the movie, you know what happened in the end. But I'll just say this, that the way the movie ended was nowhere near what you would have ever expected, especially it being, quote unquote, the Catholic Church. The way this movie ended is not something I would ever expect in any church, on any religion, on any denomination, which is funny. So I hope I sold the movie. I hope they gave me some royalties for promoting the movie. It's not a bad. You can watch it with your kids, but definitely I think you want to be able to have a what do you call that? A debriefing with the kids after, so you can kind of talk things through. And we finally made it to the American Pope. So I honestly, for lack of a better word, I don't have any research on the new Pope. I just know there's some 5 things that I know of. Obviously, the media is going to pull up a bunch of things political. He's American, which I believe is the first American in history, which is pretty interesting. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I think from a global perspective, I find it interesting that we have an American Pope. And in this election cycle or this political cycle of the United States, we have a president who is very much so visible on the world stage. And here we have a Pope for the first time as an American. I think that's crazy. Just the timing. I don't know I haven't prayed about it. I haven't even, because we just found out the other day. So it's not something that we are well versed on. I do find it interesting. I watched his address to the public, or not to the public, I guess the public, to the people. That's Italy, right? It's Italy. So, and he's speaking in Latin. So I wonder what his credentials are. I am curious to see what the credentials are. Like where did he learn to speak Latin? Or I'm sure. I mean, obviously, if you're in the Catholic Church, you have to speak Latin or read. Is it read? Somebody can fact check. Is it read and speak? I'm not quite sure. So I don't know if that's a good thing. What I do believe, though, after watching this movie, The Conclave, I think we all can agree that the church does need a reformation. There has to be a desire to open up the hood and be honest. You know what I mean? Like, you have to be honest. You have to be willing to open up the hood of your vehicle and be like, man, I'm so sorry. I got to change your oil. You know what I mean? Like, man, there's a lot of that acid around your battery terminals. I got to clean that out. There's a lot of acid eating the connections. You've been running a little bit of rough. I know your transmission, it's been skipping a beat. And man, I'm sorry. I gotta do some maintenance. And you know, some of us need a whole overhaul. You know what I mean? Like you gotta rebuild everything. We are going to face judgment for sure. Yeah, right. That is a fact, Dr. John. And Inside Your Head on Twitch said, like, Diet Coke got you. That's true. I think even regular Coke. Diet Coke is don't have the sticky sugars. But I think Diet Coke is still sticky. But these are great analogies. But you know, there needs to be reformation of the Catholic Church, any church that has not opened up their hood in a while. And when I say a while, I mean daily. You know what I mean? I mean daily. I haven't done it a lot this past week, but these guitars, they're not just decoration. They're actual, instruments of worship. And so yesterday, when I first woke up, before I do anything else, go to the restroom and I grab the guitar. Well, okay, take that back. I confess. I did check my phone for like 5 minutes. There's some things that I do that are bad habits. I check my phones. I always check account balances. I always check money stuff. Always. And that's something I got to work on. And then if it's social media, I ain't going to lie. And then I'm like, I got to grab my guitar. And my wife was like, she's already kind of stirring. And then so grab the instrument and just start worshiping. And I think for like a good hour, just, worshiping God and praying in between and just asking and hoping that I get some kind of revelation on what his heart is for me for the day. But the reformation of the Catholic Church, it has to come. The reformation of the Christian Church, it has to come. If there's things that haven't been addressed, it has to be. It doesn't matter if you're in a victory lap or if you're the last car in the lineup. It doesn't matter if you're in a harvest season or if you're in a planting season. There has to be reformation or at least a desire to reform. Because anything other than that, man, we're in a very prideful state. You know what I mean? And I don't know. I'm praying and hoping that this new guy who's the Pope, I wonder if he's going to be the kindling to the fire, because there's a lot of Catholics that came out in recent years that are very vocal about changing their life, but also implementing their values in their workplace, in their even in their branding. Michael Knowles, there's Candace Owens, there's a bunch of people I think Candace Owens is Catholic. I can't remember. But it's good to see TNT out there on X. Appreciate you. So there's a lot of things that I feel in the reformation of the church. And I don't just mean one specific. It could be, could be multiple churches. But Dr. John on YouTube, he actually really hit it right on the hit it on the money, hit it on the head, whatever. He said that, most religions are void, right? They're void. Actually, he said void of relational connections to Christ, and that's so true. So whoever this guy is, whoever this Pope guy is, I hope that at the end of the day, I hope he stirs up something to where people have a legitimate relationship, right? And for anybody that's listening or watching, this is not a church podcast, or we don't preach on here, but this is my heart though. So no matter where you are, here's what I'll say. Be at a place where you're so desperate for God's presence. Of course, Dr. John, drop some names, brother. There's quite a few. I don't know if it'll help me with my my metrics, but I know Michael Knowles, Candace Owens. Is that her name, Candace Owens? I think Matt Walsh. There's some others. And I think, I want to say Dr. Jordan Peterson, if I'm not mistaken. Dr. Taylor. There's a lot of doctors. Here's what I'll say, that my desire is that at some point we all become so that we get to a place or a position in our life where we are so desperate for God's presence in our lives. I'm not talking about, getting to all the religious stuff, or I'm gonna look this guy up, Dr. Taylor Marshall, from Dr. John's recommendation. So that's my desire, right? To get into the place where we're so desperate for God's presence. The one thing that bothered me, I think it was yesterday, when I watched the Pope coming out. It's so crazy how I picture these things, man. It's like I see this guy step out on this balcony, and I know this is not what it was, literally, I don't think. But I see this guy get out on a balcony, and he gets out in front of thousands of people. The world is watching. And the entire crowd and the world is like erupting in praise. They're like, like, yeah. And they're like, yeah. And I'm thinking, what are we doing? Like, what are we doing? All I could think of is Lord of the Rings. There's a scene in Lord of the Rings where I guess I want to say Saruman, or whoever his name was. Yeah, Saruman comes out, and he gets out on this balcony, and the crowd is just, well, in this case, it was the soldiers. The army was just erupting in praise. And he says, to war, right? He says, to war. And the guy that was next to him, I think they called him Silver Tongue or something like that. Slither Tongue. I forgot what they called him. He started crying, started weeping. It was such a dark moment in this movie, Lord of the Rings. And I don't know why he was, I'm going to go watch it again, but he was crying in this scene where Saruman had went up on a balcony, addressed the army, and everybody's erupting. And I couldn't stop but think about that scene when I saw the Pope up on a balcony yesterday. And I'm not saying that he's an evil God. That's not what I'm saying. But the imagery, that's what I saw. I said, wow. And I'm thinking, what are we doing? And I seen in the crowd, there's a few people crying, young people crying, and just, and it's almost like Michael Jackson. You know, Michael Jackson is like, he does this, like, you ever see Michael Jackson live? He's like just standing on stage, and the crowd is just like erupting. And as soon as Michael Jackson turned his head, the crowd goes nuts again. Everybody's screaming, right? And I'm thinking, what are we doing? I feel like, and I'm not, I don't want to say it in a judgmental way, but it kind of bothered me a little bit to see all these people praising this guy. And I have my issues with the way that they, and like I said, I'm not against Catholic. And that's not what I'm trying to portray here, but it did bother me. And I'm thinking, why are they screaming and shouting so much for this guy? I mean, it's a blessing, I'm sure, for on many levels, hopefully. But it did lead me to the question, like, what are we doing? Why are we praising this guy so much? Man, I'm pulling back on the reins a little bit, but there's some things that I'm praying that it does lead people to really, at the end of the day, I hope it leads people to a relationship with the Lord, with God. Because if we glorify man in such a way that it elevates our thought processes above God and not to God, I think we run into some trouble. I was going to wait to the end to drop this, but I agree with what Dr. John said on YouTube. He says that we best be careful about praising men above God. Number one, we weren't created for that. You ever wonder why people that are famous, and maybe not even just famous, but I'll pick on famous people. You ever wonder why it's so hard for famous people to this would be a blanket statement. It's not necessarily true, but you ever find it interesting how people that are famous, they have such a hard time living a good life? And I don't mean good like Christian good or Catholic good. I'm just saying, like, you ever find it interesting that a lot of people that are in the spotlight, they have a hard time living a good life. Like, when I say good, like, let's just say, I don't know, stable, staying married, for example, not getting caught doing things that are just, in a cultural perspective, evil or bad. Right. So here's what I'll say to that. We were not created to receive praise. That's not how we were. Matter of fact, when God created us, it was to give God glory. And now I'm bringing in the Protestant Christian hat. That's why we don't receive. You ever notice when somebody tries to like compliment you, you kind of have a weird feeling about it? That's actually, I'm not talking about being validated or being a good or bad. I'm just saying when people praise people, and like, even though it feels good, like, yeah, you praise man above God, it never leads to a good end to that, And so Luke 1:32-33, it just says that it's not about Jesus, that he will be called great, right? And that his kingdom will never end. And so in that reference, when we build our kingdoms and our businesses, we build our quote unquote legacies, and we build our castles, there's only one that lasts. There's only one supreme castle, one supreme kingdom, right? And so I do pray in the era of the Catholic. Wow, it's been 50 minutes talking about the Catholic Church. I will say that I hope that this selection of the new Pope will lead people to understand that, hey, I think it's about God, right? Not some guy, not some elevated leader, not someone that they pray to that's, a picture on the wall, right? It's not a physical thing that they touch and they, that's part of a ritual person. And there's nothing wrong with doing things out of habit or, but if the things that we do don't lead us to a place of presence with God, I think that's a bad place to be. So Did I spend enough time on the Pope? I think I did. I want to talk about the Canada. Here's a question. Why do we say the United States, but we don't say the Canada? How come we don't say the Mexico? If anybody can answer that, that'd be great. Why do we say the Canada, the United States, but we don't say the Canada? So I do want to talk about the Canada. But before I do, I want to pull it something. I think I can pull it out. Let me see if I can find it. Can I find it? Let's do that. The Google. So here's what I'll say on the Canada discussion. I feel like sometimes the Canada, they get placed second behind the United States in an area of discussion, media. Here's some answers from Dr. John since he's a Canadian. Because you have a constitutional agreement between states. I don't read thus the United States. Thank you for this is why I ask questions, guys. So I get answers, and I got some answers. Inside your head says I don't read it's a quick word. So here in United States, that's interesting. Here in the United States, here in the United States, here in Canada, here in the Canada, but I swear Canada has a bunch of states or provinces. Is it provinces? Provinces. Somebody got to help me out on that one too. Is it province? The province. Anyway, so yeah, go back to Canada or the Canada. They got a new leader too, I believe. If I'm not mistaken. I don't even know who he is. All I know is I was rooting for the guy who ate the apple. That's all I know. That's all I know. I think Pierre is his name. Yeah. So who is a new president of the Canada? Is it president or prime minister? Yeah, this is how. So is it Mark Carney? Is that who it is? I don't know. I'm really bad with that. Yeah, they have provinces. It's okay. And we didn't form a constitution until the early 80s. Wow. Interesting. I think Canada, along with the United States, there's a dark history, right? Because when we talk about the massacre of indigenous peoples, both the United States and Canada, Mark Carnage. Is that his real name? Mark Carnage? Mark Carney. I see what Dr. John did there. He's getting politically, he threw a political dart there. But Liberal Party, okay. So he's a prime minister. He just assumed the role in early March. So do they have an actual election? Like, do people vote for these guys? I'm very curious. I always wonder. I don't understand the terminology of prime. Like, what is the prime minister like? Do they minister to people? Like, I always wondered about that. I'm gonna look it up. Like, why do they call it a minister? Like, are they? Yeah, I figured Canada had an election. Let me ask the Google what like, why is it called like that stuff? I should know. I know I should know this before going live and doing a podcast, but why is Canada? I'm gonna look it up because I know they're not the only one. Like, why is that? So they're called prime minister because it is attested in 17th century sources referring to Cardinal Richelieu after he was named premier minister to head the French Royal Council in 1624. But nobody says what does it mean? So it just See, nobody. It's the leader of the government in some countries. It's called prime minister. So the president usually refers to the head of state of a country that is a republic. A prime minister is the leader of the government of a country. You can't make this up here. So Dr. John says attached to British. He capitalized and he shouted, British. We're attached to British politics. Okay, so let me try to work through this phrase. So the term president usually refers to the head of state of a country that is a republic. A prime minister is the leader of the government of a country. So he is the leader of the government of a country with a parliamentary. I can't even say this word. I promise you, I graduated high school. I did go to college. So he with a parliamentary system of government that is either a constitutional monarchy, which is Australia, or a republic, India and Taiwan. They still haven't answered my question. Like, what does it mean? What does prime minister mean? So nobody's answered that. I'm asking Google. So I want to know the root. Like, why minister? Let's try Wikipedia. See what Wikipedia says. So let's see if they have root definition. Okay, etymology. Is that the word? So the term prime minister. Okay, I already read that. See, nobody says. Man, this is going to be a homework assignment for you guys. I'm still trying to figure out why minister, because it's such a contradictory. It's a contradictory that you have a political leader and you give them the title of minister. You know, like what? What? Wait, huh? Wait, I'd be like, huh? I'm waiting for somebody to comment on it, but wait, what? Minister? See, that's just my limited knowledge. That's my limited depth of brain power to understand. Why do they say minister? I always wondered that. I mean, when you think of ministry, okay, let's see. Let's do this. I know Google can figure this out. I'm trying not to use the word Google, but let's see. Define the word. Define the word. This I know, but I want to read it out loud in verbatim. Okay, so the word ministry, okay, is the work or vocation of a minister of religion. So the second part of that definition is in certain countries, a government department headed by a minister of state. Number three, in certain countries, a period of government under one prime minister. And this is a rare definition where it says the action of ministering to someone. So technically, so if I finagle with it, I guess you can say if they are the prime minister, they are ministering to the people, or you can say they're serving their people. Maybe. Let's pause and reflect on that thought. So Mark Carney, or Carnage, as Dr. John had stated, and guys, I don't get into politics. I don't know politics. I just know government, and I know that God wants, or God desires governmental structure. That's clear. If you don't believe me, it's okay. If you want to argue, you can get your own podcast, and we'll talk about it on yours. So I'm just kidding. But okay, so I guess the prime minister is the guy that serves everybody because he's the prime. He's like Optimus Prime, but he's like not of the Autobots, but he's like the prime guy of the government in whatever country. right? So now I get it. I understand now. But I still don't get it on the area of, I swear, I don't want to say I swear. I believe that ministry is connected to not just Christianity, but religious practices. So in the area of the Canada, as Dr. John does not say, the Canada, they have a new prime minister in the, I think, I don't know, and people can they can cry, misinformed or whatever, but I really like the guy with the apple. I don't know his political stances. If you guys don't know who I'm talking about, just type up Canada presidential candidate who eats apples, and you'll see some really great interviews. But I thought that I like that guy. I think, I don't know his political views. I probably should have, because kind of affects us too, right? It does affect us as people. And I don't care what country, what state, I don't care where you live. In the Americas, yeah, I got to say it. In the Americas, whether North or South Americas, and as what a great segue to the United States, as Trump has proven that one governmental body can affect the nations. Yeah. And here's our Twitch bots came in trying to sell me a package. Twitch likes trying to sell you view bots. I should check it out and see how much they charge. I'll make my own. I'm just kidding. So as Trump has proven that one governmental body can literally affect the nations in such a way. It's like in the book of James, right? Where the book of James, chapter 3 talks about the power of the tongue, right? Where it can literally, it's like the rudder of a ship. It can literally steer a massive freight liner. Is that freight liner? Into a reef, right? And just kill everybody. Or it can run into another ship, whatever. And that's how powerful. It's like the scripture reference talks about the power of the tongue. It's like that metal bit that's in the horse's mouth. You just tap it one little way, the horse turns. You tap it the other way, the horse turns this way. I mean, you have a huge, 2,000-pound animal, like a bull. You put that thing in its mouth, and you can kind of control it to some degree. The power of the tongue is something that's proven to be very effective in a negative or positive way through whatever politician you want to choose. I don't care what politician you choose, honestly. There's a girl on X. Her name is Ani. If you guys want to look her up, her name is Ani. We're not friends or anything in real life, but we're Twitter friends. We're X friends. That sounded mean. I didn't mean for it to sound. Anyways, she's a great content creator. She's connected to a company called Creator Buddy. And anyway, she said something today that how she used to stutter a lot. And I said, and then she said, I don't stutter anymore. And now I host, these public events where there's thousands of people attending. And I commented today and I said, you know what? I've been speaking publicly for 30 years, whether it is, speaking public events or preaching or playing music or singing. And I still stutter. And I've learned, and actually there's a time when I purposely did not stutter, or I cultivated my speech in such a way that was done with excellence, but I didn't like it. Now, if I'm going to do a training seminar, or if I do a workshop, I minimize those things as much as possible. I try to stay on point. But if it's a free-flowing conversation, that's different. Like what I'm doing now, I'm okay with the stutter. Yeah. TNT said, I thought I saw you have, I do have, I think it's 10 bullet points, 10 or 12. I forget, I forget how many. I just put it together. And I have a free public speaking cheat sheet. But here's what I'll say. Anyways, going back to Ani, I chase squirrels too. I said, I still stutter, and I've been doing it for 30 years. And I feel like as long as you deliver your content, right? And I cited some references. I put a video of Obama. Obama stutters like a madman. I'm just telling you. Brother man can stutter like if, and I'm not making fun of the guy. I'm actually embracing, so what I said was, man, the most powerful man in the world at one time had a heavy stutter. And this is what I believe, and I might be wrong, but I think some of that is intentional. So, good example, if I want to control the room or the stage, I can talk in an authoritative tone and speak less words, and then I give the crowd a chance to comply, if you will, if that's the right word, right? I'm not saying Trump does that, but if you watch Trump, for example, if there's an unruly situation, he will say a few words. I'm not saying he does it the whole time, but we can all agree that Trump has very few words in his vocabulary. I'm not saying that to be critical or negative, but I'm making a contrast here. And Trump will say X amount of words and just pause, right? Obama, for example, there's a few occasions you can watch on YouTube where there's something happening in the crowd, and he's like, now just hold on. No. Just hold on. He's hold up like 5 times. Hold up. Just no. He's like, no. Like, you can write this, like, if you do subtitles, you see that the little bouncing ball bouncing up and down. But he got control, or at least theoretically, subjectively, he got control of the situation. But that's his style. And that's a long side topic of what I really wanted to say. So going back to James chapter 3, where we talk about our tongue is literally it has the ability to be like a fire, to speak death or even bring life into a situation. So there's different ways, right? And so when I talk about the United States and how all these things, whether you agree with whoever is in office, we can talk about Trump if you want to, but when Trump speaks, whether you like or agree or not, people listen. Right? For various reasons. And I think with the way that he's running the government now, I think more people are listening more intently and then being more deliberate on the recycling of what he said. Right? So they don't want to get it wrong because they're probably going to get sued or their credentials removed from, whatever event or having press privilege, whatever. And when we're talking about the United States, and I promise we're talking about the United States today, is that there are a lot of things that are happening right now in our government in the United States that have either been a long time coming, for better or for worse. I was watching this podcast with who's a great stutterer, by the way, Theo Vaughn. Theo Vaughn, I don't agree with him, obviously, with some of the language that he uses, but I admire the way that he works in conversation. So he did a podcast with Mike Rowe. And one of the conversations that they had was what's happening in our nation. Like what's happening in the United States. And one of the things that obviously you can't have a conversation about the United States and not talk about tariffs. And so one of the things that they were talking about, well, is this a good thing or a bad thing? And one of the things that Mike Rose said, look, whether it works or if it doesn't work, he said something has to be done. Like there has to be we've gotten to a place, and I'm probably going to butcher the statistics, but he said, I'll give a high number. Less than 10% of actual manufacturing is done in the United States. Everything else comes from other countries. But yet we are the largest consumer of goods and services in the United States. Right? So if we're consuming everything, but we're not making anything, that kind of is a problem if we're paying extra for those things to come into the United States. So there is an imbalance in that respect. The other thing that they talked about that really got my attention, I want to highlight a little bit about that today, is because my wife just got her business degree literally since we transitioned from Hawaii to Oregon. Like literally in 3 years, she got. My wife and I we're obviously we're big on education. We we homeschool our kids. My first stint in college, I never say my first stint. My first stint in college, I had a scholarship for I want to say it's architectural design. So I thought that's what I wanted to do. And then later on, I actually shifted to criminal justice and very adamant about that, try to be a cop and all that stuff. My uncle had a college, attended Bible college as well, and then went to Wayne Baptist University. So education is something that we're very, obviously we value that. My wife obviously got her education. Now, by the grace of God, we're able to get that worked out financially. But I do think there's a bill attached to that. I think there's a bill attached to that too, right? Education is not free. I'll just say that it's not even free. I don't care where you get in, education is not free. So the discussion that I was listening to is that there's I think this is a low number, but I think the amount of money that students owe for college loans is $1.3 trillion. That is what the student loan debt is, $1.3 trillion. And I thought about that. I was like, wow, that's a lot. That's a lot of dollars. And then there is this discussion about, is college for everybody? And if you've ever heard me talk about my kids, and I say, when my oldest daughter graduated, she went to college in Boston. I won't say which one, but she went to college in Boston, went there 4 years. She graduated. It took her a little bit of, what's the word? Encouragement to make sure she finishes. So she, went to college, finished. My wife, of course, later in life, in her 40s, went and got her business degree, working on masters. And I told her, well, if it works out, might as well do the PhD, honey. It's only like another year and a half. So I make it like it's easy, right? So, but if you ever heard me talk about my other kids, I'm like, I don't know, they may not. The discussion in the United States is they want this. They have this narrative that, okay, when you graduate high school, go to college, 4 years. I'll drop this numbers for my daughter, and my daughter's college was cheap. Okay, so she had a very cheap school compared to the schools in her area. Okay, so $50,000 a year for my daughter's education for 4 years. Okay. And that's one of that's actually that's a bargain. That's a bargain for that area. The schools in her area, easy $75,000 per semester. So easy $150,000 a year. Easy. Okay. So anyways, here's a discussion, right? So we're telling these kids, go to college, just incur a bunch of debt. So as soon as you graduate, boom, you've got $200,000 that you owe. And you got to pay back. Like it's technically. So, and this is not even a political discussion. It doesn't matter if it's the student has to pay it or the American public, it's still money that has to be paid, right? So what's the upside? What's the flip side? What's the other options? For anybody that's followed me since 2019, 2018, if you know Joey, business partner, we started a cryptocurrency company. I think it's 2018. I forget what year. I'll say 2019, 2020-ish. Yeah, I'm trying to remember the year. Let's just say 20. I think 2020. And so what we offered was, we call it meme coins. Okay, so and the idea of a meme coin is that in today's culture, in today's financial climate, meme coins are associated with what they call rug pulls, meaning we'll take your money, or we'll put all your money in this bucket. You come bring your money in this bucket, and I'm probably painting the wrong picture, but we'll do this together. And then when you're not looking, I'm going to pull the rug from under your feet and I run away with your money. So that's the idea of a meme coin. Meme coins typically do not have what we would call a utility, but they promise something that's of value. And usually most meme coins are associated with a lot of marketing and hype. Now, there are some meme coins that are doing really well. Doge is one of them. Have you ever heard Department of Government Efficiency, Elon's, baby? It's literally named after a meme coin, which has proven some stability over the past 5 years. And then there's another called Shiba Inu. There's several others that are all in the top 15, top 20. So that's my long discussion about, like, when we formed this company, we had 10 people. I want to say it's about 10 people, 10 or 11, that I never met except for two. I met two of them in person. The other eight or nine, I never met before. Okay, so my point is we formed this company, and then there's this one guy who didn't have a college. He didn't have a 4-year college degree, but he went to what I think they call a boot camp. And basically, it's like an accelerated course. And what I found out was people that do these accelerated courses through the tech industry, once they graduate, they immediately can get catapulted into like a 6-figure job easy if they pass whatever the requirements, and just like that. And the boot camps are typically, and if I have the details, somebody can correct me on that, but I'm kind of trying to simplify it. The other avenue, one of my nephews, he went to, I think, a year of college. It was like a technical school called Universal Technical Institute. It's for mechanics. And immediately out of his education, he can get out and get a job, probably 60, 70,000 a year, which is okay in Hawaii if you live with family. And then obviously 6 figures and up if you go to like the luxury dealerships and you become one of the senior guys. But you don't have debt, right? You don't have $200,000 of school debt. And if you're going to be a doctor or a lawyer, obviously those are positions that are, I call those, what do I call those? Those are generational professions. That's what I call them, right? So in Hawaii. So a lot of friends and family that are doctors, lawyers, dentists, sometimes they already have that existing, in their family, in their family tree. So what am I saying? So all these things in the area of the United States, when it comes to the job market, that's kind of where I wanted to steer this ship, is that the job market is hungry right now for people to do jobs that they don't necessarily want to do. I think Mike Rose said, the number went down from my last time I talked about it, but he said that there's how much? Let's just say 7 million. I want to say 7 million jobs right now that are in need of people to apply for them. So he says the alarming thing is that there are and I'm pretty sure I got the numbers wrong, so I'm going to give a super low number. He says the alarming thing is there is like around 2 million men that don't have a job, but they don't want to work or do those jobs. And he said a lot of these jobs they're not, your standard fancy jobs, if you will. I don't think they're all quote unquote dirty jobs, because that's just, if you know who Mike Rowe is, that's one of his that's one of the things that got him popular, was doing a show called Dirty Jobs. It talked about how many jobs there are, and people are not doing those jobs. So here's what this is what I really want is focus on is, okay, so we have all these jobs, but yet we're telling kids to go to school, go to college, and incur $200,000 worth of educational debt. And then when they get out of school, when they get out of college and they go get a job, they find that maybe the job market is not hungry for what they have. You know how many people I know right now that are looking for a job that they're not getting callbacks because it's already, they've got 100 people going for the same job. So now I'm not putting obviously teachers or firemen or those types of jobs, but I am curious to see with this administration in the United States. We talk about tariffs, right? And that's kind of how I'm going to segue into tariffs, because in the area of manufacturing, and I'm not a fancy government guy or economist, right? But I do agree that if less than 10% of our manufacturing is in the United States and we're buying everything from everybody else, we have no control over our jobs. We have no control over our products and services. And this kind of leads me to the next discussion. I see TNT's the edge. I agree. I feel you on that. Here's what's crazy though. Never before would I have ever thought, like growing up in the 80s. So for people that don't know, I was born in the 70s, grew up in the 80s. Who would have thought that you can get a job without having to go apply for it? That's a crazy thought, right? And I'm talking about, like, obviously if you're going to be a police officer, obviously you gotta do a job interview. But who would have thought that you can get a job, your own job? You can be an independent contractor, start your own business. You don't have to put on a suit. You don't have to go to a building. If you have an internet connection, you can connect with products or services and offer those products or services, or be that service, and make money. Who would have thought you could do that back in 1985? That, I don't have to go to a building. I don't have to go apply. I'll go to the App Store on my iPhone. I'll download an app. Go make some money. Isn't that crazy? I still remember my first job, my first corporate job. I'll leave it at that, and then I'll go back to my my first business as a kid. But my first job, where I got a paycheck, and I think my starting pay. Let me see. Let me ask the Google. What was minimum wage in 1992? Minimum wage in 1992. I don't know what's wrong. I'm getting sidetracked here, but my iPhone, when you ask Google something in iPhone, I think iPhone suppresses this. I'm going to ask my Google phone, my Android. What was the minimum wage in 1992? Okay, so I got paid $4 because I didn't get paid minimum. I was a good worker. I got paid like $4.50. And then I remember I got $5.25. Okay, so I got paid. So back in 1992, my first job was like $5. I'll just say $5 an hour. Okay. I worked at Hardee's. That was my first. Yeah, that was my first actual job. Working for a corporation. And I don't know why I brought that up. But I remember going to the interview. I remember her name, Connie. Connie was my boss. Alphonsus Lamb, he was my other boss. And there was another guy named Brewer. I want to say Marty Brewer or Mark Brewer. I remember the names. I remember how they worked. I remember the work ethic. I remember Al Lamb. He was a former center for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He was huge, massive. Connie, she had gray hair, just like how I do now. She was probably my age back then. And she was a great boss. So I remember having that job. And I remember doing the interviews. I remember being tempted to lie about stuff. But then at that young age, I didn't have anything to lie about. It's my first job. But then I remember the dad's, like, what type of work experience do I have? And I remember talking about, my first business, which is technically my dad's business at the time. It was like a side hustle. So my dad, we used to have this station wagon. Pulling out some real history right here. So we used to have a 1973 Chevy Laguna station wagon. Bright red. The horn was embarrassing. This thing didn't even have rims. This thing had hubcaps. It had these hubcaps with the Chevy logo on the hubcap, okay? And they were silver. So imagine, now see, in 2025, this would be cool, right? But back in whatever year that was, I think it was 1980. I forget what year that was. No, okay. So this is the cleaning business, okay? So I want to say that's like 1986, 87. Okay, so we had a 1973 Chevy Laguna station wagon. My dad bought it for $500. Anyways, we stuck a lawnmower in the back of the thing, and we go cut grass. And I want to say we charged $50. I don't know if that's. I believe it's $50. I just remember that I could buy stuff. I remember my dad would pay us a portion. I don't know what he paid us. I'll just say $5 an hour. He'll pay me and my brother like $10 each or something, and then my dad would keep the rest. You gotta pay the boss, right? So anyways, that was my first business. And that was with my dad. And I remember cutting the grass. I remember how I really didn't enjoy it, but I kind of did at the same time. Like I remember getting, sore, tired, all that stuff. But it was ours. Like we did that, right? And we got cash that day. My mom used to have a cleaning business at the same time. And so to paint a picture of this time frame, so back in 1985 through 1991, okay, my parents went to Bible school, they went to Bible college. So my parents hold multiple degrees. Okay. So my dad, he was a banking executive in the 80s. I don't know how many years he did that, but he was in line to become literally the vice president or president of one of the largest bank in the state of Hawaii. That was the trajectory if he had stayed within that. Okay. And how I know that is that over the years, my dad, we would have contact with some of his old colleagues, and they're in elevated, what do you call that? Corporate positions. One of them actually became president and vice president of the bank that he was employed by. And then, of course, my mom was, she managed a medical group. I forget how many people. I don't even know if I even had that discussion with her. I wish I did before she passed. Anyways, so when they gave all that up to go to Bible college and go get another degree of education or another educational degree, whatever, it was tough, man. Like, we lived on pork and beans and corned beef hash, and just because we didn't have a lot of money, because they transitioned from having a decent living to just bare minimum. Okay, because they're going to school full time. Only my dad could afford to go to work full time, and so he provided for us. Okay, so my dad worked 40 hours a week, easy, and went to school full time, and was still a dad and a husband, and he attended all of our games, and he put us in private school. So go figure that out. Me and my brother went to private school. He worked hard. Now, here's where the side hustles came in. So having a lawn care business, which is what my dad decided that's what we're going to do together as a family, as you know, me and you two boys. My mom, she cleaned houses. So you can say she was a maid or whatever, but it was hers. It was her business. She would get clients and she would charge them. I don't even know how much she charged. Okay. But it was all money. So even back then, man, I'm just thinking about that right now. My parents pulled out all those extra oomps. And made it work. I just realized I'm so far away from the title of today's podcast, which is funny. But I led in with Rufus, Rufus the Enforcer. Right? Here's what I'll say in all of that. There's something inside my mom, inside my dad, that they had to go out there and make it happen. Right? With these tariffs and all the things we talked about earlier with the elections and the political stuff, we talked about Rufus the Bull. There has to be something that comes in and says, no, this is it. This is how we're going to do it. You may not like it. It may, for lack of a better word, it might be, I don't even know. I'm trying to find a nice word. You might not like it. And I like what Mike Rose said. He says, look, if these tariffs work, great. If they don't, well, sometimes it's just, he said, but something has to be done. I'll share this story, and then it'll be back in line with the title of Rufus the Enforcer. My mom, there's this famous story about my mom. I don't know her job title or position at the time, but so my parents transitioned from the corporate world, went into ministry, they became pastors, but actually before they became pastors, they were teachers. They taught at a Christian school as well. My mom, I believe at the time, was the acting principal of this school. I don't know what that means, acting principal, because she was a principal. I guess maybe she wasn't getting paid as a principal. I'll leave it at that. Anyways, there was a parent who was not happy with the way his son was being treated or something. When all the facts came in, basically this parent was not right. His son was in the wrong from what I gather, okay? So my mom and this parent have this confrontation and they're arguing. And as my dad tells me the story, my mom is having this argument with this parent who was a guy. People were coming into the office, turning around and walking back out because they don't want any part of this conversation with whatever's happening. So my mom and this guy, this parent, this father, they're arguing. And my mom, and God bless this guy because he's kind of find out they're actually very good family friends of ours. They over time, right? But my mom put him in his place. Not in a negative, bad way, but she basically told him, I don't care who you are. I don't care, and I'm paraphrasing the story, but I don't care about your credentials or what you've done in your lifetime. I don't care what you're capable of. This is what it is, and this is what, basically, this is the law. Okay? So my mom told this guy off. And they're arguing, they're yelling. This guy that she was arguing with is a former enforcer, if you will. I don't know if that's the correct word, but basically he worked for lack of a better word, there's an underbelly or like mafia type atmosphere in a certain period of Hawaii's history. You can say syndicate. You can say it wasn't mafia because Hawaii didn't have mafia per se. I don't think they did. But he worked for the syndicate. He was a rough guy. He was a very tough guy. It's like Trump. He was a tough guy. But my mom didn't care. She's like, this is what it is. This is the truth. This is what happened. You can't bully me. And from what I remember, that story is that he backed down and he respected my mom. But it took my mom to say, no, this is no. As my wife says, no. I don't care what your job title. I don't care what you've done in the past. This is what it is. And I think for us, and I believe this is where we're headed in this podcast today, that at some point there has to be someone that comes in and says, no, this is what it is. If I was to encourage anybody today, if you're a husband, a father, you're a provider and a protector, sometimes we wear multiple hats, and sometimes the hats, we have to put one hat down for a second while we, take care of something. So whether it's a provider's hat that you put it down for a second and you're protecting and your finances are struggling, there are decisions that we have to make, right? At some point, one of the best examples, and I'm gonna land this podcast. I'm gonna try to land it. I'm gonna try to land it well, gracefully. There are many scriptures in the Bible where it talks about, if for lack of a better word, that God brings in this enforcer. There's a very popular passage in the Bible, and they actually made movies about this, where there was an angel that had passed through Egypt and basically killed the firstborn of every child. And one of the things God told the people, the Hebrews at that time, so if you put the blood of the first, the firstborn lamb, the blood of the lamb, put it on the doorpost, and the angel of death will pass over your house. He won't take your. And I think the powerful thing about that is that was very necessary at the time in that period of history for that to happen. And I think, I don't know what the Pope, the new assignment of the Pope, what that brings. I don't know what the Canada of Mark Carney, I don't know what that brings. I don't know even what Trump brings. What I do know is that, as I said earlier, Luke chapter 1, verse 32 and 33, that it says that Jesus will be called great and that his kingdom shall have no end. So no matter what we build here, right, I will encourage people to bring things into alignment with your relationship with God. That's what I'll land with that. And to bring it all together with Rufus the Bull, which I think is a great. If you haven't, and here's a disclaimer: there is a little bit of swearing in this channel, so I don't want to promote like as if I'm endorsing it, but for the sake of example, Rufus the Bull Rescue, I think is what I would. If you typed it up in your social media searches, you'll see this bull come and rescue the rancher. I think it's an interesting take on how sometimes we've got to call in somebody, right, to shake things up. One thing I will say is to be in prayer over your homes, your households, your country, your nation, your state, whatever level of vision that you have. That there is there's a movement that I hope and pray and believe that God will bring prosperity. And I'm not talking about just finances. I'm talking about, okay, I'll go back to the movie. If you haven't watched the movie The Conclave, with all of this finagling, if you will, trying to orchestrate an outcome as they tried in this movie, it's just so ironic how things in the end, in my opinion, it just totally wrecked the whole motives of man, because the way the movie ended was it was crazy. But sometimes we've got to make those tough decisions, right? Here's what I'll say. As I mentioned earlier about that movie, that a lot of the people that were in that movie, not once did I ever see them talk about God or, hey, let's pray about this. And this is not a preaching podcast. Obviously, I don't. But I will say that in the area of making those tough decisions, I will challenge you to not just include God, but make him like the heavy part of that. Allow him access to. And for people that are not religious, I totally get it. If you're not Christian, that's fine. I will challenge you though. Say, hey God, if you're real, would you show me something that, and do it from a place of like obviously humility, but being like honest about it, if that's what you want. And I promise you that he will show himself to be true. I'll drop these two scriptures on. I think it's did I write it down? I'll drop one more. Jeremiah 1:10. You guys can look it up. But it just says that this is God talking to Jeremiah, how he charged him with the nations and the kingdoms. And it goes into alignment with Rufus the Enforcer. So in that passage, it just talks about how God granted Jeremiah this kind of enforcer job title. So in our families, if you have a business, if you have a job, I'll encourage you that wherever God calls you, give him access to those areas. You know, the most private areas, the most intimate areas. And trust and believe that, and just believe that if you give him access, I can promise you this, he will reveal himself to you. What a crazy title to try to tie it all together. So thank you for listening to my voice. For those of you that are audio only, for those of you in the live, thank you for being patient with all the quirks and features. I do hope and pray that you guys are well today, no matter where you are. I do pray that you are highly favored by the Lord, and I appreciate every one of you that takes the time out of your day just to be here. So that is it. I think that's good. I think I covered all my points. I didn't really cover the Canada like how I thought I would, but it's okay. I'm good with this. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your hearts. For those of you that tap the screen, thank you for your data. For those of you that paid by the gig or paid by the megabyte, thank you for your data. But most importantly, thank you for your time above everything else. And we just hope and pray and believe that your time was worth it. The exchange of your time for all of this, it was worth your time. So from the bottom of my heart, as I always say, love you guys. God bless you guys. Ahui ho. Aloha and mahalo. Yes, sir. Chew.